Welcome back to the Small Sat Revolution, powered by Gomspace. I'm your host, Frank Felker. Today I have another great guest that I met at the Satellite 2024 show in Washington, D.C. OpenC3's booth was in the Startup Pavilion section of the show floor, and their CEO, Ryan Melton, was kind enough to spend a few minutes to tell us about their open source command and control system. I think you'll enjoy what Ryan had to share. We're here at Satellite 2024 with Ryan Melton. Ryan is CEO of OpenC3. Ryan, I was very interested in what you guys are doing here with this open source command and control operating system that you're offering. So tell me about it. What types of companies are making use of your software?
So we go the whole gambit of different companies in the space industry, from startups, companies like Atomos and Turan, to NASA centers. We do a lot with NASA Goddard, to the Department of Defense as well. So we cover the whole gambit. Anyone who's building a satellite or operating a satellite on orbit, our software is the software to use.
And I understand that this software has been in existence for many years. I'm sure it's evolved and perfected over time and so forth. But I was struck by your approach of offering it on an open source basis.
Yeah.
So how do people interact or find the open source?
So if you search just Cosmos Command and Control on the internet, you find it pretty quickly. Honestly, the best thing is word of mouth, right? It's just companies telling about it. People in all kinds of different industries use our software and they just discover it and share it. We're part of Hackasat. We're actually the ground system they use as part of the Hackasat project.
I had not heard of Hackasat.
Right? Yeah, it's part of the DEF CON conference they put on every year.
Oh, that's cool.
And being open source, there's very, very few things in aerospace at all that are open source products.
I can imagine.
And it makes us really unique, and it gets people talking about us. And the nice thing is you can try this out without even asking my permission, right? You can go and download it right now, run it on your laptop, and check it out.
That's great. And so can you give me an example of somebody who wanted to try the open source? And what I'm driving at is, why are they looking for a new solution?
For sure. So a lot of companies come to us, they've been using a legacy product that's been around for like 30 years. There's all kinds of historical products. I mean, for as long as space has been existed, you've needed something for your operators to look at and control their satellites. You think of those old pictures of the NASA, ground control center with all the old, CRT monitors in there. That's the exact kind of software this is. And a lot of those systems they used back then are still in use.
No way.
They are. A lot of them are 30, 40 years old. So a big part in the reason for creating this system was to just make something that was easier to use, easier to configure, and a modern solution. So now we have a web-based user interface. We support real programming languages, Ruby and Python for doing scripting, and it just becomes such a more powerful, modern system for people to use to operate their satellites.
I really love your approach. I think that's great because anytime and somebody tries to constrain a marketplace or a customer or a buyer, it doesn't work because people are going to find ways around your restraints and do what they want to do.
Exactly.
And if you make it easy for them to engage with your product, they'll do it.
Yeah,
so.
This has always been a product that it's kind of built by engineers for engineers. And we tend to come in, and especially with the open source model, we come in low level. So engineers just start using it, then their managers see it and they're like, hey, this is cool. And then it kind of spreads throughout the company.
Well, you were showing me the interface earlier and how easily and quickly, before we get to how you can configure the interface, how the user can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not Houston Command Center, ground control. This is just, it looks like an average laptop. Is there any super juiced up CPU or anything or extra RAM?
No, this is a regular MacBook Pro, and we can actually
run. It's a Mac?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a MacBook Pro. We can actually run down to a Raspberry Pi with 4 gigabytes of RAM. All the way up to a giant Kubernetes cluster that handles a whole constellation of satellites.
Amazing.
So this scales to whatever level of hardware you need. During integration and test, we're usually just running on a little server next to what you're building. But then in operations, it makes sense, especially if you're running a constellation of satellites, to go up to a bigger, kind of more server cluster design.
So is this all browser-based?
It is all browser-based.
Get out. No kidding.
Yeah.
So, because, obviously writing for Mac is a lot different than writing for Windows. Okay, so no special hardware is required?
Nope.
The open source software is free?
Yep.
Okay. If you would, show us some of the advantages and how you can configure the user interface.
Sure, so I've got a few things running here. We've got real-time graphing and historical graphing, so we log everything. very important part with command and control systems is keeping track of everything that happens. Every message that comes down, every command that goes up. You want to log that, and so you can go back in time and figure out what went wrong if something goes wrong. So a big part of that, especially for analog data, is graphing. So we have a nice built-in graphing solution. A real heart of our system is our scripting engine. So we have a full Ruby and Python-based scripting engine to where you can write real programming languages, use real libraries for even AI ML type stuff. If you wanted to, you could do that directly in here. But the key that I talked about with you early is how easy it is to configure. Our goal is to be able to connect to anything, whether it's a satellite, to a power supply, to any piece of hardware with an embedded interface. And so as part of that, you got to configure the messages to talk to things, but you also want to configure displays and unique ways of looking at your data. And the key to doing all that, and I'm actually going to zoom in over here in a second so you can see it, is all of our configuration is plain text files. So here on this screen, I've got 8 different temperatures being displayed. That is super simple to configure. All it is this text file that you can edit directly in the web interface, which is also pretty unique, and list out the items you want to show. There's a few other lines to do the kind of layout and lay things out horizontally and kind of line things up, but basically 16 lines of text, you hit save, and it turns into this telemetry screen that you can watch all your temperatures, make sure things are staying within limits, and that took me a minute versus on some oldest legacy systems it would take 8 hours.
Wow.
For something that simple.
That's great. Well, this is some pretty cool stuff, Ryan, and I feel like I could stand here and talk to you about it for hours and hours.
I would love that.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time for that, but I want to make sure people know how to learn more. Where is there a URL? Or?
Yeah, so we're OpenC3. OpenC3.com is the best place to start. All of this stuff, like you said, it's an open source product, so you can download it directly from our website, and our documentation is fantastic. So don't be afraid to just try it out and get started. It's really easy to configure for your own missions.
Is there a contact us page, or how, if somebody needs something beyond open source, which I should have asked you about. So let's say I need something beyond open source.
Yeah.
What sort of services and products do you offer?
So our main product is Cosmos Enterprise Edition. That's our kind of upsell from the open source version. Mm-hmm. What that adds is a lot more security and scalability and just quickness of getting up and running. So we have full-based, role-based access control, so you can have view-only users, you can have people who can only command certain subsystems, or you can have admins who can do everything. And on top of that, we also have direct integrations with a lot of our partners. So we have integrated with KSAT, LeafSpace, and several other vendors for ground terminals. And then we're ready to go for a lot of test hardware as well, like Keysight power supplies. All that's included with our paid product. On top of that, we do training. Mm-hmm. So this is an easy-to-use system, but it's still a lot to learn.
Sure.
So we do training on how to use the system and also how to configure it. And then we do support contracts. If you're happy with the open source version, that's great. We'll support that as well.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a smart idea.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this today, and I'm so happy to have learned about it.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks again to Ryan, and thank you for joining us. If you found this content to be interesting and valuable, please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Like and subscribe on YouTube, or listen to our audio editions on a podcatcher near you. Till next time, I'm Frank Felker saying I'll see you in space. The SmallSat Revolution podcast is powered by GomSpace, with platforms, components, systems, and services to meet every SmallSat requirement. GomSpace brings their innovative technologies and a flight heritage of over 2,000 successful deployments to your next mission. GomSpace, leading the SmallSat revolution. Learn more at gomspace.com.